Trump is now working on building ties with his French counterpart, with the scandal surrounding his son, Donald Trump Jr., looming over the visit to Paris.
During a joint appearance with President Emmanuel Macron, the president found himself defending his son. KCAL 9 political reporter Bryan joins us now with more on the president's visit to Paris.
Yeah, there were some nice moments, as we'll see in just a moment, but there were some rough times during the day as well. If President Trump thought he could get away from the Russian election firestorm for a few days by slipping away to Paris, well, it didn't quite work out. In fact, the only question asked by an American reporter at the news conference this afternoon was about just that. The scenery has changed for President Trump and the First Lady. A private dinner at the Eiffel Tower with the first couple of France, high above Paris Thursday evening. But the subject has not changed. At a brief news conference alongside French President Emmanuel Macron, where only one American reporter was called on, the question was about Donald Jr. and the Russian emails and meeting.
I have a son who's a great young man. He's a fine person. He took a meeting with a lawyer from Russia. It lasted for a very short period, and nothing came of the meeting.
That meeting between Donald Trump Jr. and Russian attorney Natalia Veselnitskaya, who was described in an email to Trump's son as a Russian government lawyer, is now part of the investigation into whether the Trump campaign colluded with the Kremlin to interfere in the 2016 election, a meeting which Trump characterized as nothing out of the ordinary.
I think it's a meeting that most people in politics probably would have taken.
Not true, according to some Democrats and Republicans, and even President Trump's own nominee to lead the FBI, who said the FBI should have been called the minute that email meeting offer, purportedly from the Russian government or people with strong government connections, was made. Former Republican Congressman Mike Rogers, who was the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, told CNN that sounds like pure Russian intelligence all the way.
When the government of that country says they have information about someone who was, by the way, a former senior government official, Secretary of State, the first call is not even your counsel. It's to the FBI saying, I don't know, I'm not sure what I need to do with this, but I don't want to take the meeting. And we should never set the standard of anything short of that.
Trump blamed the news media.
Zero happened from the meeting. And honestly, I think the press made a very big deal over something that really a lot of people would do.
California Senator Dianne Feinstein, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, says they would like Donald Trump Jr. to testify.
The intention would be to have him and possibly have him next week if he would come. And we just need to discuss the mechanism of it a little bit more.
In what may be a surprise to some observers, President Trump sounded like there might still be some wiggle room on the Paris Accord and the climate change issue.
Something could happen with respect to the Paris Accord. We'll see what happens.
Unclear whether the president was just being polite in front of a French audience or is really reconsidering U.S. withdrawal from the climate change accord. Also tonight, recent off-the-record remarks by President Trump on the Air Force One flight to Paris were made on the record Thursday, including some remarks the president made about building the wall at the Mexican border. For the first time, President Trump is apparently shrinking the wall along the 2,000-mile-long border pretty significantly, saying, quote, "You have some rivers that are violent and vicious. You have some areas that are so far away that you don't really have people crossing. So you don't need that, but you'll need anywhere from 700 to 900 miles." And in a related matter, CBS News confirms that Special Counsel Robert Mueller and Congress are looking into whether the Trump campaign's digital operation, headed by the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, coordinated with Russians to target voters with fake news stories on Facebook and Twitter. And we mentioned the dinner at the Eiffel Tower. This is some video of the president, the first lady, and also the French president and his first lady enjoying their view of Paris. It's quite a sight from up there at the top of the Eiffel Tower where this restaurant is located. Of course, this was a private dinner for the four of them. Now, here's another little nugget from the Air Force One conversation we mentioned in the report with President Trump. New York Times reports the president said he stopped questioning Russian President Vladimir Putin at that G20 meeting they had last week, if you remember, about interfering in the election, after he denied it, after Putin denied it, because the president told reporters, what do you do? End up in a fist fight? Jeff, Andrea, back to you, huh?